Hello and welcome to another lap guide for the iRacing Camel GT series. This week we are at Silverstone Grand Prix. Here's the lap first. All right, lap time there is a 132.850. We have morning weather this week. Ran these test sessions in 81 Fahrenheit track temp. And let's see, let's go back to the start of the lap here and go through this turn by turn. Okay, so coming down into turn one, cops, you want to kind of start to lift on throttle somewhere between the two boards here, maybe just before you reach the 50 board as you start to turn in. You can't see the apex behind the guardrail here, but obviously the timing and getting the angle in on that turn will just come with practice. And you really want to aim to use as much of this curbing as you can to the point where you can actually drop a tire into the grass even without an off track. However, the more that you cut into that, I think the more that puts you into an awkward line on exit, and you may be more likely to run too wide here on exit. I found that on exit you could actually put a tire off into the darker green surface there, and it starts to get pretty slick over there. But you can briefly touch that without an off track actually. But I try to avoid it. I try not to use any more than this extra reinforced surface here to run the ideal line and the amount of speed there. So I like the line in this particular example. It's what I'm trying to do. Sometimes like I say, go off into the grass a little bit or run just a little wider. But this is the kind of line that I'm always trying to hit as I come through here. You can see there's a bit of braking, a little tap of the brake here or there. Not real necessary. It may help a little with turn in. I don't know if I just found myself doing that out of habit or if that was helpful or not, but I did just a tap of the brake as I start to turn in. That may help a little with shifting the weight of the car forward if having trouble with that. And one thing to maybe note is that if track temps end up a little bit warmer, with the setup, you can kind of help a little bit by raising the rake, the rear end of the car just a little bit to help with turn in a little. So that's something that I'll probably be doing depending on the weather and depending on how the car feels. Other couple notes about Silverstone is I have raced it before and I wasn't real sure how this would go for this series, and I found myself actually liking it quite a bit more than I thought I would. And I've really enjoyed just running laps and kind of getting familiar with it with this car. And it's actually becoming one of my more favorite tracks, I think, with this car. It's actually a lot of fun. I think it will be a good multi-class racing track with all of the space. We'll have to see how much the Audi drivers enjoy driving it, but I actually like it quite a bit with the Nissan. So having a lot of fun with it. Let's watch this first turn back at speed. All right, so coming down into maggots, all full throttle, right up until you get to the first part of the chicane here through maggots, where you want to really lift right as you reach and aim to use all of the extended surface here. Grip is fine through there. There's no off track through there, but you'll see I lift right as I reach, and then going to be a downshift down into fourth in between the two corners of the chicane, turning in, giving a little bit of throttle, but then again using all of this extended surface across the curbing, try to keep the speed up all the way through, and then downshift into third. And the apex that you're aiming to hit is right at about the midpoint of the curbing here to the right, which is where you want to now start to get back on throttle. And as you get back to throttle, the car's going to run wide. If you don't find the car running all the way out to the close to the curbing here, I don't think I ever touch it on the exit. I touch it when I cross over. But if you don't find yourself running this wide, you may actually just not be carrying enough speed. And I found that I could carry more and more speed through here, the more practice that I got through it with it. And let's go ahead and play that through just to kind of see the sense of speed through there. All right, so coming down hanger straight into stow, keeping the car to the left and being patient on turn in. There's going to be a quick downshift into third. Braking will be probably just past this this structure here, but the threshold about 80% at this point here. There isn't really a good identifier of that. What I'm usually looking at doing is where I want to start to turn in, which is kind of about where the line thickens right here. It's really also kind of hard to spot, but I don't like to go much further down than that. You can kind of almost see where the asphalt has kind of a darker shade, and you kind of want to run that outer line as you turn in. So aiming to hit that turn in mark is kind of that's where I base my braking point, to make sure that I can brake before that and get turned in and trailing off the brakes by the time I reach that. So there's the downshift into third, trailing off the brakes and turning in. Kind of a later apex as you come around. You want to wait to get back to throttle until you've gotten all the way back over to the curbing right about here, it looks like. So getting back to throttle, and then of course getting full throttle as soon as possible, and then all the way out in full throttle. So let's play that through. So braking point here is kind of tricky. Comes up pretty quick on you, and there's actually a little bit of a bump here as well. I think I start to brake roughly where this white line is, although threshold brake is further up. For me, it's probably about to where this structure here is to the right, about an 80% brake at that point. But you'll notice at speed, the bump that the car hits as you hit that threshold point. And if you brake just a little late or too hard, you will lock up quite a bit, and you'll find yourself running pretty wide before you can get into the turn-in point. So if anything, be a little bit more cautious in braking, and maybe even backing that up a little bit to avoid a late brake and a lockup as the car kind of bounces over that point. So kind of tricky there. It comes up pretty quickly in your vision as well as you kind of come up over the crest of the hill there. But braking actually quite hard as well. That's probably a little over 80% at that point. And you can actually turn in a little earlier and cut this corner a little bit. So as I come into the corner here, let's see, turning in right at about where you can see there's a little bit of a angle in the white line there to the right is kind of where I'm starting to turn in. Starting to turn in there, and then I'm actually aiming to cut all of the curbing and even put a tire into the grass, which I think I do here. And you can do that without an off track. But I don't know if it's necessary. I just found that's the line that I found was most natural, cutting through there. So let's go ahead and quickly play through that. So getting back on throttle here is pretty tricky. It's a pretty tight corner, and there's kind of a tendency to want to get back to throttle as the corner opens up, but you've got to really wait and be patient until you've kind of come away from the first curbing. So you can see the car's going to kind of gradually come away from the first curbing, and then it's going to start to angle back again toward the second curbing. That's really where you've got to start to ease on throttle at that point. And you'll actually notice in the replay there's going to be a quick correction of the wheel there. And I think that kind of helps to demonstrate how close that is on the edge of traction right there, even at 60% or so throttle. And so as you come around this corner here, you've really got to be patient and also easing on throttle very, very gradually. You can see me kind of modulating even to full throttle here a little bit, because it's just really, really difficult to get to full throttle sooner than that without losing traction and sending the car into a spin there. So kind of play that through here. And at this point, the car is full throttle, and the momentum is going to carry you wide out over the curbing here to the left. There's no off track for it, but I found that when I've run that line well and carried the right amount of speed through there, almost always I'm going to kind of cross over to this curbing here to the left and then back on the surface there is pretty typical. So let's play. Okay, so coming down into, let's see, this is Abbey. Yeah, this is Abbey. So we'll come down into Abbey, another difficult spot for brake markers. There is a little line here off in the grass. It comes up into your vision at kind of the last minute. I think I start to brake right at about that point. And actually, I'm braking before that. Maybe that's where I'm threshold braking. Yeah, I'm actually threshold braking at that point. So starting to get to brakes just as I've reached the grass to the right, easing into the brake, and then threshold brake about 80%. As the car comes side by side with that is about your marker, and that's kind of where the structure here as well. So you can use that. Patient on turning in. It is a bit of a late apex here, or if you can late apex it, it helps a bit with your exit and setting up for the next corner in the chicane, which can actually be a little bit tricky. I tried to avoid the curbing here actually now more and more, because I found that as you come across this curbing, there is a bump that can kind of lead the car into a oversteer on throttle here, and you can kind of spin at this point a little bit without warning. And I found the safer line through here is to actually just kind of come around the outside of this curbing and just let the car run wide here. I do run wide here as well, and you can use a lot of the surface here, maybe a little wider than I would like, but getting back to this first part of the chicane, if you can late apex this a little bit, you can see it is already kind of a late apex as you're coming around. You want to kind of sacrifice that exit to get out around and keep the speed up through the next corner in the chicane. But the better that you can late apex this first corner, the sooner you'll be able to get back to throttle coming off of it, and then that'll kind of lead you into a line that just kind of comes straight through here and off wide on the left. And it's going to be safer. You're going to be less likely to spin if you're taking a lot of curbing here, or even as much as I took, which is I thought a safe amount. But the more I ran it, and the more I ran it with fuel, even, it just didn't feel like a safe line in a lot of cases. And that little bump right about there at full throttle was oftentimes just enough to send the car into a slide. And definitely seem to be minimized by running just a little wider through there. So let's play that. So coming down through the bridge here into Priory, you can take this all full throttle. If you keep the car wide here and aim to use all of the curbing here to the right, you can get an off track if you take any more grass than I've taken here. That's pretty close to an off track, so you can kind of cut across it there, but any more than that will be an off track. But you can see there's no lift. You can take full throttle all the way through there. And coming down into Priory, I actually did make a mistake here and turned in just a little early. Took a lot of grass and actually didn't get an off track. It didn't turn out to be much slower of a line, although this isn't typically how early I turned in. I just turned in early in this point, and that actually did not get an off track, surprisingly enough. But I will generally turn in a little later and just kind of get right up close to this curbing. And you'll see that the angle of the line here kind of was a little bit awkward on exit, and ended up running just a little wider here than I would like on exit because of that early turn-in point. But and in the end, it really didn't cost too much, but it really was an awkward line. It was the one part of this lap that if I could change, I would definitely take that corner just a little later. So coming into Priory, what you're really doing is you're coming full throttle here, and just as you come off to the right here, you're going to start to lift and get the car set up here to the right, and you're taking a line through Priory that helps you carry as much speed through, and also that helps you get back to throttle just as you come across the or just because you get to the midpoint of this curbing here, and then you can go full throttle all the way down the right hand side here to get set up for Brooklands. All right, so let's play this through. All right, so into Brooklands, again, kind of a late apex, or very much a late apex, and you want to kind of sacrifice the exit on this corner to get set up to carry more speed into Luffield. These two sets of corners I found is probably the most difficult set of corners for me on the track to hit consistently, and very often would drop 2 or 3 tenths just by not quite hitting these corners correctly. And so I think these are the most technical set of corners and also the most challenging from my experience. But if you stay wide here on entry and you aim to use all of the latter part of the curbing here, late apexing off the corner here, then ideally you're not running any further wide than, I don't know, maybe about the midpoint of the track here, so that you can get to throttle and carry a lot of speed into this corner. What I like to do is carry a lot of speed into it and then kind of drag the brakes to get the car down to the amount of speed that I need to reach the curbing here to the right. If I reach the curbing too soon, then I find that I'm over slowing the car because I'm right up close to it, and you don't really want to use it. The traction on it's rough, and there isn't a lot of good grip there for your tires. So I try to avoid using any of the curbing here, but I like to get close to it. And you can see the red section of the solid red section of wall as you start to get that comes into your vision. Right as that comes into your vision, that's actually about the point. I don't know if that's where I'm actually looking. I just noticed that's where it was. But as you come into the that part of the curbing here, this is really when you ease back on throttle. And so as you're easing back on throttle, aim to use all of the exit curbing and come up over it. So if you're focused on the red and white curbing on the exit, and you're focused on just reaching that point, you actually may not be carrying as much speed off the corner as you could. And so the amount of throttle that you give it coming off of this corner should send you all the way across into the this reinforced surface here, and get to the point where you're getting on throttle early enough and coming off the corner with enough speed, and you'll see that the amount of throttle that I'm feeding in definitely will coincide with how much I'm kind of unwinding the steering here. You still got to be a little cautious getting back to full throttle too soon here, but definitely aiming to use all of that exit curbing. All right, so let's play these two sets of corners back. Actually, I don't know if I talked about braking here. Breaking down into Brooklands. That's going to happen just kind of toward the end of this this extended surface here, and it's maybe about a 40 to 50% brake, and then trailing off. So not real heavy on braking at that point, but yeah, that's about where I'm braking. It looks like right there at the end of this section. So if you can threshold brake, maybe think about getting your braking done before you reach the end of this section or the end of where this patch of sand is, and not turning in too soon. Again, kind of getting to the point where you get to this curbing as you turn in to make sure you can hit that late apex. So let's play that through. All right, so there's a lap of Silverstone Grand Prix. Hope it's helpful. Talk to you later.